Alright, real talk. Yu Yu Hakusho is one of those anime that people say like they love it, but they don't always explain like why. It's not a, they don't get into the description. They'll just say like, oh yeah man, the dark tournament goes so hard, bro. Wow, jeez. And like, well, yeah, that's true. That's kind of like saying pizza is good because it has cheese on it. You're not really giving me anything to work with here. You're just, you're just blanketing that. And here's the thing, Yu Yu Hakusho, it's a classic. I mean, it's a character-driven, emotionally messy, and occasionally brutal shonen that like somehow figured this shit out before the genre even really knew what it was doing or where it was going. So yeah, super old anime, a lot of respect, a lot of love. Let's talk about this. And also, just to throw this out there, I mean, this is full of spoilers. Do not expect any mercy whatsoever. There's 3 major arcs to this show, and while I'm not going to do anything super in-depth, there's no pretending that this show is not perfect. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just get into this shit. Arc 1, the Spirit Detective arc, it's a weird human foundation for Yu Yu Hakusho. And it starts with something that most shonen would never dare to do. It just straight up kills its protagonist right there at the beginning. Yusuke Urameshi dies in episode 1. Like, not even, it's like the first 10 seconds of the show, honestly. It's like the opening for this show is just, man's getting cut. And not in a blaze of glory or anything, but he was saving a kid who was about to get absolutely zeroed in the middle of the road. So, that's good. And, and that right there tells you that the kind of story that we're going to be talking about here is unique. It's one of a kind. And the Spirit Detective arc, like why it matters, it's a really messy, small scale, but like deeply human kind of look at, a foundation as to why Yusuke is unique, right? He isn't chosen. He's like a delinquent screw up, and the show really outlines this with, everything. Like, look at his mom for this, Jesus Christ. The spirit world is kind of bureaucratic and really petty. And power levels, like, in a lot of other shonen, I feel like power levels are kind of a thing, but here, it feels like it doesn't really matter yet. Everything is still kind of on the same playing field in terms of the good guys and the bad guys. And, like, it does matter. There's a little bit of grief and regret. There's a lot of relationship building. You get the episodes that just, sit with people murmuring, Yusuke, his mom, and Kikyo, Kuwabara, whoa. We get to introduce a couple of characters that, are emotionally grounding, and they'll live with the show pretty much forever. It's a lot of the basis for it. The arc also includes, like Kuwabara, again, we're introducing, the dumbest man alive, but who has probably the biggest heart out of anyone I've ever seen in an anime, human or other. Then you got Botan, she's like a chaotic, kind of grim reaper, chick in a kimono type deal, and that's always fun to see. Hiei and Kurama, walking proof that Togashi understood character contrast early and turning bad guys into good guys, and the fact that he wasn't really aware of what he was doing with Hiei, but, hey, it's not flashy. But it gives Yu Yu Hakusho something that most shonen lack, and that is a fucking soul. Alright, so Arc 2, the Dark Tournament, right? This peak shonen energy. So, like, let's just not bullshit each other here. The Dark Tournament arc is absolutely fucking legendary. If you grew up watching the anime in the 90s or, like, the early 2000s, this arc probably rewired your brain. Shit, between this and Dragon Ball Z, there was just no escaping it. This shit still works because, like, yes, it's a tournament arc. Yes, there are fights on platforms, and yes, villains scream, like, a lot. But here's the thing. Every fight is more about character and not just power. Like Kuwabara fights with self-worth. Kurama fights with restraint and regret. Hiei fights because violence is his fucking love language. And Yusuke fights because he's pissed, exhausted, and carrying way too much fucking trauma. And then there's Toguro, which... still one of the best antagonists in shonen history. Not because he's strong, but because he's, like, empty, soulless. Because he's just brooding in death incarnate. Toguro is the embodiment of choosing power over humanity. And Yusuke beating him doesn't feel like a triumph. It feels even heavier on Yusuke. The Dark Tournament isn't hype because it's flashy. It's hype because that shit hurts. So, it's just so good. Not only is it so good, but look at all of the animation, the hours, the dedication, the nonsense that it took to just plug all this shit together. You really have to take a look at the series as an overall perspective. And not only do you see it from the characters and the way that it's driven and animated, but for also the man hours that it took to do this. I mean, this is an old anime, so you have to give a lot of love and respect to the dedication. It's hard to really, put the Dark Tournament into a box, because at the time, while tournaments were a really big thing and shonen in anime as a whole, there was so much of it that felt like, maybe it was getting tiresome. But at the same time, being a kid in this generation, whether I was watching this or Dragon Ball Z, I mean, people were fighting in the ring and I was just loving the shit out of it. Every character had so much depth and every fight meant so much. There was a weight that Toguro and his group brought to the Dark Tournament that, I mean, even Cell in the Cell games couldn't bring. It's just a one-of-a-kind experience, watching Yusuke take over for his mentor and, endure all of the extra baggage and pain and shit that he has to do just because, he needs to kill Toguro. I mean, it's a life or death. It's all or nothing. And so, while it is a tournament anime, at least this season is, this arc is, it was, again, I have to give it the most love and credit because it was just visually stunning. It was emotionally deep. Very, very good in terms of character building for people that you like, and side characters. I mean, even the fights to get to Togoro's group throughout the entire tournament felt like you were watching these characters grow together, and you were watching these demons accept these humans more and more per fight. And then, it all comes down to it with, Yusuke having to fight Toguro one-on-one, and that fight, I mean, even to this day, is just an absolutely legendary piece of anime history. There is nothing you can say that would change my mind. Dark Tournament was just the fucking Dark Tournament, man. You had to be there. You had to watch it. As a kid, seeing that shit on Toonami, watching on Adult Swim, every Saturday night, you were watching these people grow into, these powerful, strong characters with development and baggage. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to see next to the stunning visuals. It was just amazing. Alright, so, Arc 3. Chapter Black. This is where the show just gets kind of uncomfortable. Chapter Black is where YuYu Hakusho stops pretending that it's just a battle anime, and we try to move away from a lot of those arena fights that we were seeing before. This arc asks dangerous questions like, what about when humans can be worse than demons? Well, enter Shinobu Sensui, a villain who does not snap because of greed and power, but because he saw the truth and the evil that lies within humanity. Chapter Black just kind of hits different because Sensui isn't wrong, he's broken. The arc deals with genocide, torture, and moral hypocrisy. Violence stops being fun. This is Togashi at his most critical. The artist who is brooding behind it all. Power levels become meaningless, and psychology takes center stage. Yusuke, he's tired, he's confused, he's carrying that baggage and slowly realizing that punching does not fix the system. This arc walked so that later anime like Hunter x Hunter could sprint. Shit was insane, and I don't want to delve too much into this arc, but it really did go beyond what you had been led up to think that YuYu Hakusho would really be, and it was just so damn incredible on its own. Alright, so the elephant in the room, the final arc here, yeah, the Demon World arc exists. It was kind of rushed and it's uneven. It has really great ideas and somewhat kind of, questionable execution. But knowing what we know about Togashi's health, you can't hold it against the show. YuYu Hakusho still ends with, emotional honesty, even if the road there is, a little bumpy. I really personally enjoyed the last arc. I didn't think that it was so unforgivably bad that it in any way does any kind of damage to YuYu Hakusho. It just kind of feels like a very brief last hug before it's gone forever. And in some ways it's kind of my favorite, and in other ways it's not. It's very akin to the final season of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Book 3 was so incredibly good, but it also serves as one great last little bit before it's gone forever. So take it with a grain of salt, especially given Togashi's struggles with everything that he had been through so far, and the deadlines and the stuff that he was going with all the animation companies. The poor guy had to do something somewhere. So this is what we got, and I thought it was just fine. Don't let people, make that decision for you whether you think it's good or not. Watch it, see what you think. Alright, so the final verdict and why YuYu Hakusho still matters, why it's still, I think, relevant today. YuYu Hakusho isn't perfect, but it understands something that's just timeless. Characters mattering more than powers. Pain mattering more than spectacle. that growth isn't linear. It's messy and it's all over the place. It bridges classic shonen and modern storytelling in a way that few shows ever really have. If you have never watched it, fix that shit, like immediately. And if you grew up with it, then you already know. Either way, thanks for hanging out and listening to me talk about Yu Yu Hakusho, as this is a show that mattered so much to me as a kid. I was always watching Adult Swim, and especially on Saturdays when anime was coming through and it was really changing, I think, a lot in the Western world. This was one of those shows that you'd never miss. New episode came on, no matter what you were doing, you would stop and sit, because it was just drawing in that sense. Yu Yu Hakusho is not necessarily a show, it's more of an experience. And if you've ever struggled with things in your life, I think this show can show you that struggle is good. Just as growth isn't linear, everything does come together, and as messy as your path was, I think you will always come to a better place as long as you are fighting for what you think is right. And with that being said, until next time.